y'all, thanks for tuning back into Chickanic. I hope everybody's having a great week. Sorry, I have been away for just a minute. I have been super slammed. We have been getting really busy here at the shop. Once the sun pops out a little bit, everybody realizes it's time to go check their equipment and find out that it does not work. So we get super busy this time of year. But on top of that, I had some family come in. My brother, he just got off a 9-month tour on the USS Carl Vinson. Yes, you might have heard about that one in the news. That was the boat that had the F-35C jet crash land onto, well, didn't really crash into it. It sort of just skipped off of it and then just sort of dumped over the side of the boat. So he was actually on deck when that happened, had a cool story to tell. So he said it was super scary, but thankfully nobody, there was no fatalities from that. People got hurt, but everybody ended up okay. But before we get into today's video, if you're a fan of saving time, money, and frustration while fixing your own small engine equipment while watching in-depth tutorials, you've come to the right place because that's what I do. I upload a couple times a week, and if that sounds interesting, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, hit the notification bell, and don't forget to leave a comment. I love to read through the comments, and I will respond to all the early commenters. All right, so even though I've been super slammed the last couple weeks, a lot of it has been stuff that's just not really interesting or things that I've already made videos on. I've been getting in a ton of chainsaws too, and I feel like you're tired of me making chainsaw videos. So I did get in this HC 150 Echo hedge trimmer today. And what I thought would be good is to give you a little reminder on what you need to check since you're pulling your equipment out now that's probably been sitting for at least 6 months. Hedge trimmers are something that you might only use once a year. And just remind you of some of the steps that you need to take to get it going again if it's not running correctly and not wanting to just start up and go, or even things you need to check, preventative measures so it will run correctly and you won't have any issues in the future. Now this hedge trimmer has sat for about 6 months, he said, and the gas that's in it is the gas that he had in it from 6 months ago. So the first thing I'm gonna do, we're just gonna go through some diagnosing tips here. He's brought this in because he said it would start, but it would not rev up. In fact, let's go ahead and take it outside and show you what it does. All right, so we're gonna prime it up. Well, that's not good. The first thing I can tell is there's gas all over my fingers. So either it's coming out the air filter or it's coming out the primer bulb. I'm gonna go ahead and try to start it up anyways. Since I know that so much gas is getting through the carburetor, I'm going to make sure it's turned on. I'm gonna hold on to the throttle while I pull it and see if I can unflood it. We know it is getting way too much fuel and that's what's bogging it down. So let's start tearing it apart and see what's going on. I am definitely going to change this gas out though because it smells like pure alcohol. I don't trust it, and we'll go from there. All right, we are going to remove the air filter cover because I got a feeling this air filter is soaked. And it is completely soaked. So we know we have gas just flooding through the carburetor. The needle's not shutting it off. Now this can be attributed to while it sits, the diaphragms in the carburetor will become hard and they will not let the gas flow through correctly. Either it's the diaphragm has pooched out and it won't touch the needle lever to actually let any gas through, or it is splished down and it's sucked in and it won't stop the gas from flowing through. So this one has obviously just keeps letting the gas go through. So what we're going to try on this, since this is such a good carburetor on this, and it does have good diaphragms, and he used it, he said, about 6 months ago, and it ran fine. We're going to dump this gas, pour it out. We're going to leave the air filter off for a second to let everything dry. And I'm going to just run it for a little bit and actually see if I can loosen the diaphragm back up to where it will act correctly. If it doesn't, we will have to put a kit into it, but hopefully, and I tell this on a lot of things, especially the little Craftsman cheap trimmers, the little Bolin trimmers, they're really bad about it. Just the diaphragm's hardening up over time, just sitting throughout the winter. You do not need to do anything to it a lot of times. It does not need a carburetor adjustment. Most of the time when a customer brings one in, I spend probably about 5 to 10 minutes on it, but it'll save you a trip to the shop and time, money, and frustration. All you have to do is, if you can get it to start, if it's still primed, you got good fuel in it, and you go to start it, and it acts like it wants to die when you take it off choke, keep playing with the choke. Just go back and forth. You're just revving it up and letting it go, revving it up and letting it go, keeping the throttle engaged the entire time. You can loosen the diaphragm back up and make it pliable again to where it will distribute the gas correctly. And remember, whenever you are dumping your fuel, to prime it out of your carburetor also, because if you have real nasty, stinky gas, you don't want to leave it in there and just smush that nasty, stinky gas into your fresh fuel. You want to start with a whole fresh batch. I'm going to put some of my gas in there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this plug also, just make sure that it's not fouled out. Well, I've seen worse, but it's definitely not perfect. All right, so I've changed out the plug, I've changed out the fuel. I'm gonna leave the air filter cover off to let that air come through and dry everything out, because I'm sure it's still super flooded. We're gonna start it up, we're gonna turn it on, make sure it's off choke. I'm gonna go ahead and probably compress the trigger to get some more airflow through the carburetor and see if it starts. And we're just going to run the stink out of it until we hopefully clear it up. I think it sounds good. So I've been letting it sit here on my counter just to see if gas continues to pull up in the air filter base, and unfortunately it is. So we know that we still have an issue with it not shutting fuel off. But there's one more thing to check before we go into the carburetor. I noticed the tank vent is right here, and it's hidden up underneath the housing right here. I noticed that the entire line going to the tank vent, and it's a lot more helpful when these are clear instead of the black lines. I could see it completely full of gasoline. So I want to get you zoomed in a little closer here. So what I did, I released the pressure from the gas tank, and when I did, the gas shot back down into the tank. So we know if the tank vent's not working and it's building up pressure inside of our fuel tank, it's going to push that fuel into the carburetor and past the needle. This can definitely be your issue. So I'm going to release the cap, and you could see the gas come back down. So we do know that the tank vent is definitely clogged up. So what do I do next? I leave the gas cap off. I'm gonna let it sit for at least an hour or so and just see if it continues to flow gas out the air filter base. If it does, then we know that it is another issue. If it doesn't, if it stops, we know we got a clogged tank vent, and that's actually a much simpler fix than having to go into the carburetor and replacing all the diaphragms. All right, so it was pretty much pulling up with gas in the air filter base immediately while it was sitting here on the counter before. I left the cap loose on it and let it sit here for about an hour. Let's check this air filter base and see if it's still doing it. Well, I don't see anything pulling up. Perfectly dry. I think we figured it out. All right, I went ahead and put a new line with a new tank vent. We're gonna put it up in its slot, and let's see if it continues to flood on us. Let's tighten it up. Okay, so I waited another 30 minutes, let it sit. It's still dry as a bone. I'm gonna take it outside. Now it might smoke a little bit initially whenever I do start it up because it was so flooded, just pushing that gas in constantly into the carburetor and cylinder and a muffler. So it might smoke a little bit, but I think it's gonna be good to go. Well, it runs great, and I was not expecting that to happen, but hey, you learn something every day. Check your tank vents. That's definitely an issue every once in a while, especially if you have gas pouring out. It has nowhere to go. It has nowhere to vent. It will find a way out, and that's what it was doing. So thankfully, it was an easy fix. This customer's getting off pretty cheap, and hopefully this video will save you some time, money, and frustration in the future. All right, so I'm gonna leave a link in the description box below for that tank vent, but also check out, I have a link up here I'm gonna leave to putting it in an entire carburetor kit if it ends up not being the tank vent and you have to go farther into it, and I'll put a link in the description box below on where you can get that carburetor kit. Now the video that I'm going to link up above, it is on a pole saw, but it's the exact same engine, and so you'll be able to, you know, follow it step by step. Also, a lot of people have asked about my Amazon wish list. I have put a bunch more stuff on there. If you'd like to show your support for the channel, thanks so much. You can go check that out. There's a link in the description box below. Thanks again. Have a great day.